The question is, how do Mendel's experiments show that A. Traits may be dominant or recessive, B. Traits are inherited independently. So first let's answer this A part, that is trait may be dominant or recessive. So Mendel performed a series of experiments on pea plant, that is the monohybrid cross and dihybrid cross, and he observed that when he crossed pure breeding plant with contrasting trait, example tallness and dwarfness, the offspring that were obtained in the first generation or F1 generation exhibited only one trait, which was the dominant trait. For example, this is the homozygous tall which is crossed with homozygous dwarf plant, and after this we got the first generation, that is F1 generation, having the genotype of capital T small t. Here both the alleles are present, a dominant one and a recessive one, but the phenotype which is seen is only the dominant one, that is tallness was only observed. So Mendel had selfed this F1 generation, and after selfing this F1 generation, second generation was observed, which was F2 generation, in which he observed that tall plants were in a ratio with a dwarf plant, and that ratio was of 3 is to 1. So there were 3 tall plants and 1 dwarf plant. This pattern indicated that dominant trait was masking the effect of the recessive trait, and even if both the alleles were being inherited, only dominant was being able to express itself. So here we can see that example. So when we are taking a tall plant which is homozygous and a dwarf plant which is homozygous and crossing them, the F1 generation is going to have both these alleles, but the character which was seen was only tallness. So here also we can see the dominance, and in the case of F2 generation, 3 out of the 4 plants were showing tallness, that is again they were becoming dominant, and only 1 out of the 4 was showing the shortness as a character. That means shortness or dwarfness was a recessive trait. Now talking about the next part, that is independent inheritance. So Mendel has done a dihybrid cross in which he considered two traits at the same time and demonstrated that these traits are going to be inherited independent of each other. So he crossed pea plant that differed in two traits, example is seed color and seed shape, and observed that inheritance of one trait did not influence the inheritance of other trait. That's the reason even if only two types of plants were there in the parental generation, four possible combinations were observed in the case of F2 generation. So in F2 generation of dihybrid cross, he observed that a phenotypic ratio was of 9 is to 3 is to 3 is to 1, and four different combinations were observed, indicating that the traits were being inherited independently. So here's an example. So when crossing a pea plant with yellow round seed with a pea plant with green wrinkled seed, in the case of F1 offspring, all the offsprings that were obtained were yellow and round. Why yellow and round? Because yellow and round character are going to be the dominant one. So this yellow seed and round seed is going to be the dominant one. But in the case of F2 generation, the phenotypic ratio was found to be 9 yellow round, 3 yellow wrinkled, 3 green round, and 1 green wrinkled, showing that the ratio was 9 is to 3 is to 3 is to 1, which states that all the four possible combinations were made, which indicates that inheritance of seed color and seed shape are independent.